The Emergence of the Buddha. About 2500 years ago, a prince was born in India. There was an unworldly seer called Ashta. One day, when taking a rest after a meal, he saw all the gods were dancing with joy. "You look so happy. Why? What happened?" he asked them. "An amazing baby was born in the Shakya clan located in the Lumbini district. He will give happiness and peace to the whole world in the future. That's why we are so glad," they answered. After Ashtar heard it, he hurried to Lumbini and asked Shakya clan to let him see the baby. The baby, named Gautama Siddhartha, was shining like the sun. Ashta exclaimed, "Amazing! What an awesome prince he is!" When Shakya clan saw tears on Ashta's face, they got worried. "Will he suffer from anything bad in the future?" Ashta said, "I am not crying because of anxiety for the baby's future. The baby has two paths. If he does not become a monk, he will become a great king of this world. He will never lose a battle, gain a great amount of land, and make a fortune. On the other hand, if he becomes a monk, he will become a Buddha, an enlightened one. In order to save people, he will preach the law. His deeds will become known to people all over the world. But I will not be able to hear his teaching because of my old age. That is my biggest sadness. So I am crying." The Shakya clan was so happy to hear this. However, they wished the baby to become a king. Therefore, his father decided to shut the baby up in the castle and gave him delicious food and beautiful women. Gautama Siddhartha lived gracefully in the castle as a prince. His father, King Shuddhodana, had a big palace with many lotus ponds. There were some attendants beside him to protect him from the heat, the cold, dust, and dewdrops. Inside the palace, he enjoyed beautiful music and the accompaniment of many beautiful women. One day, he was interested in the world outside of the castle. He asked his charioteer to take him out of the castle. The shape of the castle was square and had gates in the north, south, east, and west. First, he went out through the eastern gate. He saw a man who was bent over, holding a stick. He was so surprised because he never saw a man like him. He asked his man, "What happened to him? His hair, body, face are completely different from those of other people." "He is an old person," his man answered. "What is an old person?" the prince asked. "An old person is the one who is suffering from his old age." "So, am I to become an old person? Can I avoid getting old?" "No, nobody can avoid it, my prince." "I don't want to look at any more. Let's go back to the castle." After he returned to the castle, he became depressed for a while because he realized that he could not escape from getting old. "How unpleasant!" he cried. When the king heard it, he was confused and decided to give him more sensual pleasures and comfort. This decision seemed successful for a while. The prince gradually forgot about what he saw outside and started to enjoy his life in the castle again. However, the prince went out again because he felt a little bored. On the way, he saw a man who was lying on the road with painful look. The prince was surprised again and asked his men, "What happened to him? He looks very painful." "He is a sick person," his man answered. "What is a sick person?" "A sick person is the one who has an illness. I'm not sure if he will recover or not." "So, will I become a sick person? Can I avoid getting ill?" "No, nobody can avoid it, my prince." "I don't want to look at any more. Let's go back to the castle." He became depressed again. He thought, "How unpleasant." After that, he spent more time in the castle, but it gradually overwhelmed his curiosity and went out again. This time, he saw many people surrounding a person who was not moving. "What is this gathering?" "They are holding a funeral service for a dead person," his man answered. The prince came near the gathering and saw them. "What is a dead person?" he asked his man. "A dead person is someone who cannot talk with anybody." Death is eternal separation from his beloved person, such as family or friends. "So, am I to become a dead person? Can I avoid death?" "No, nobody can avoid it, my prince. All people will die someday, even me or you." "I don't want to look at any more. Let's go back to the castle." The prince realized 3 kinds of suffering which no one born in this world can avoid: old age, sickness, and death. He hated and worried about them. The king gave him the greatest sensual pleasures. However, finally, he went out of the north gate and saw a monk. He asked his man. All his hair is shaved. He has special clothes. Who is he? His man said, "He is a monk. He is practicing to get rid of all the sufferings." "What an amazing person! I want to be a monk." He was so impressed. He decided to become a monk at that moment. This story is called The 4 Sightings, where the prince went out in 4 directions from the 4 gates of the castle and saw old age, sickness, death, and a monk. This prince was later called Shakyamuni, the founder of Buddhism. Shakyamuni means the saint from the Shakya clan. The prince Gautama Siddhartha thought, "All people will get old. Nobody can avoid getting old, yet people forget this. When you see an old person, you might not think that you want to get old. And then you assume that you are still young. I am the same as you. I cannot stay young forever. But when I see an old person, I am distressed, ashamed, and hate him." After he realized this assumption, there was no more pretension which young prince had felt in the past. Previously, he thought youth was a matter of course and nothing special to him. But now he no longer thought, "I am always young." He thought about sickness and death in the same way. When something is as you wish, you might be happy. But if the thing is not as you wish, you might feel suffering. The cause of suffering is a gap. For example, if you failed in your confession of your love, of course you might feel deep sadness. Your ideal is to get the answer of yes, but in actuality, you got the answer of no. There is a gap between your ideal situation and the real situation. This is similar to what the young prince experienced. The ideal situation is to stay youthful, to live without sickness, and to live forever. However, in actuality, nobody can live without facing old age, sickness, and death. He built up an imaginary self that wishes an ideal situation. Thus, the gap between the imaginary self and the reality brings sufferings. What disappointed him was that he himself could not accept his real self. He realized that his imaginary self and the real self are separated. If we can overcome the gap between the imaginary self and the real self, we will be able to live without sufferings, he thought. The state without any suffering is what he wanted to attain. That state is the goal of Buddhism, nirvana. He decided to become a monk in order to attain nirvana. His father, King Shuddhodana, was so sad to hear it. Gautama Siddhartha lost status and property because Indian monks must renounce all the worldly possessions. He was now no longer a young prince. Thus, Shramana Gautama Siddhartha came unto the world. When the king of Magadha heard the fame of the Shramana Gautama, he was deeply impressed with his dignity and calmness. The king went to see him and made an offer. I would like you to support our country. Let me give you an army and much wealth. However, he didn't accept the king's offer. At this time, he knew that there was a more important matter than to satisfy his desire. After he renounced the worldly life, he had already practiced under many masters. However, he could not attain nirvana. Then he started ascetic practices instead of practicing under any master. He tried many kinds of ascetic practices such as meditation without breathing and fasting. However, the Shramana Gautama's practice was too hard. It sometimes endangered his life. He questioned himself of whether he was doing the right practice or not. Then he gave up his ascetic practice of self-denial. This does not mean he became lazy. This abandonment showed that he realized one cannot get nirvana if he loses his health. It is important to choose the best way according to the situation, he realized. Through those experiences, he knew there was a gap between his imaginary self and real self. And it is this gap that causes suffering. Then he found that something forced him to build up an imaginary self. That force which builds up an imaginary self is called samskara. Samskara is a subconscious force or function that builds up what we think is self. The Shramana Gautama had been building up an imaginary self. However, what is the cause of samskara? He found the origin of samskara, avidya. Avidya is a fundamental selfishness. Basically, any person has fundamental selfishness in their mind. Ordinary people pursue pleasurable things without end. On the other hand, they ignore anything inconvenient, such as suffering or pain. So they always persist in anything pleasurable and convenient, and try to refuse anything inconvenient. Thus, the fundamental selfishness, avidya, which any person has, activates samskaras that builds up their imaginary selves. There is possibility to control samskaras, but it won't be easy. For example, how do you think when you catch a cold? Probably you regret that you would have caught a cold and pay more attention to your lifestyle in order to not to get ill again. In this occasion, you succeeded in making your samskaras work well. Good samskaras build up yourself that understands sickness is unavoidable and takes care of your health better. However, you won't remember that feeling of that moment after 1 month, will you? Maybe you forgot that feeling and returned to your ordinary life like before. This is natural because you have avidya. Avidya makes some scholars work badly, and you come to think you won't catch a cold. There are many kinds of samskaras, but you cannot control them easily. The Shramana Gautama's experiences were similar. When he changed his master and chose harder ascetic practices, samskaras always worked to build up himself that believes this was the right way to attain nirvana. The way how samskara activates is changeable, and the way of working varies from person to person. As the Shramana Gautama recognized specifically what avidya is, he understood the process of how the sufferings occur and how to control the main cause avidya. Then, finally, he accomplished, and Shakyamuni, the enlightened one, came into this world. After that, he walked around India in order to save suffering people. This is a small part of a long story that will be continued another time.